Okay, welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. This is the last one for the year. It's hard to believe, but we are exiting 2022 and we're going to start up a new series in January. So far this year, well, the second half of the year here, we've been doing My Plate on a Budget and talking about different food groups and how to save some money on each one and doing a demonstration that goes along with it. Today, we're going to be finishing up that series with whole grains. We're going to talk about what a whole grain is, how to find it, and how to save some money on it. And I'm going to be making apple and oatmeal pancakes. This is something that I have made for my kids since they were very little that they love, and it's something on Sundays that we all enjoy having. The nice thing with them is I can put them in the refrigerator, and now they're in middle school. They just wake up on their own and heat these up in the microwave and have something quick to eat before they go catch the bus. But they're fun for adults too. I love them myself, especially if I'm going to work out. I might have it like a half hour before I go to give me some good energy. All right, so this is My Plate. And like I said, we're going to be talking about the grain section here. The recommendation is half of your grains should be whole grains. So half of what you're eating throughout the day, as far as grains go, half of them should be whole grains. So in the chat box, if you feel like sharing with each other, I won't be monitoring the chat box. This is just for you. But share what you think of when you think of a whole grain. Like what kind of things come to mind when you think of a whole grain? And it can be whether you like it, if you don't like it, what you think a whole grain is, whatever comes to mind. And then while you do that, I'm going to start with my recipe here and we'll talk about what a whole grain is. So if you think about the difference between brown rice and white rice, that's always a great example to illustrate what it is. The reason brown rice is brown is because the grain is intact. So the white rice has had the outside of the layer stripped off of it. So the brown rice is brown because it's intact, and the white rice has had the outer layer taken off. That outer layer that you take off is where all the fiber is. And it also has most of the nutrients in it. And they also take the germ out too of the grain when they make a refined grain. And that's true when you think of whole wheat flour and white flour, or whole wheat pasta and white pasta. They've taken the grain and they've stripped it. And when they strip it, what you're left with is that white starchy center. And that white starchy center is going to digest in your body very quickly. And it spikes your blood sugar, and then it comes right back down. And so that leaves you feeling hungry again. One of the great benefits of whole grains is that they fill you up and they keep you full. Because the fiber on the outside is sort of protective of the grain. And your body can't really digest fiber, but what it does is it moves through your digestive system, releasing the nutrients and giving you energy from it. You get the calories from it. Calories are the energy in your food. But if the grain doesn't fully digest, it works as a broom, sort of sweeping out your digestive tract. So that's how it helps to reduce the risk of certain cancers like colon cancer, because it's helping to clean out your digestive system is basically the way that it works. You get fiber from your vegetables and your fruit, but most of your fiber is going to come from your grains, and in particular, whole grains. So that's why the recommendation is whole grains. And that's what My Plate recommends. If you look at other recommendations, like the Harvard Healthy Eating Plate, they'll tell you that you should be eating mainly whole grains. I like to tell people one trick that you can do to get yourself used to it if you're not used to whole grains is if you're making rice for dinner, have half brown rice and half white rice. And that way you can kind of start to get used to it that way. All right, I am going to begin cooking here. And we'll keep talking about grains. All right, I just cut the end off of my apple. If you look at the recipe I sent out, it says to use a peeled apple. I don't peel my apples though. I don't feel like it's necessary. It doesn't really bother me to have peel in the pancakes, but for some people it does. So that's kind of optional if you want to peel it. I just cut like a little bit of it off, and then I take the cheese grater and grate down the apple this way. And this is a good way to get started and get your apple prepped. There's other ways to be able to grate it. You know, if you have a mandolin, or you can chop it too if you don't have the cheese grater. Just chop it really small. I kind of like the texture of it on the cheese grater. Sometimes even if we don't have pancakes, I'll just make oats. It's another quick breakfast, but you just take some oats, put a little milk on it, heat it up with the grated apple on it and some cinnamon, and it kind of tastes like apple pie. Another good way to get some whole grains in. Now, food manufacturers do all kinds of tricky stuff to get you to think you're getting whole grains when you're not getting whole grains. They'll do things like put molasses in bread or dye it brown so that it looks like it's whole wheat bread. They'll put labeling on there that says, multi-grain or 7 grain. But you have to look at the ingredients and make sure that it actually is whole grain. Because just because it says multi-grain doesn't mean that it's whole grain. That was one that I didn't realize. I was buying multi-grain bread forever, thinking I was getting whole grains, and then I learned that you have to actually read the label, even if it says multi-grain. So when you read the label, what you're looking for is for it to say whole as the first ingredient. So when you're reading labels, the very first ingredient listed is the most predominant that's in that product when you're buying something that's packaged and pre-made. So if you're buying bread or pasta, you want to make sure that the first ingredient says whole wheat or whole oats or whole grain, and then you know you're getting whole wheat. If it says whole wheat, like down towards the bottom, there might be a little bit of whole wheat in there, but it's not a whole wheat product. There's also a symbol that you can look for that will guarantee that you're getting it. And I'll send that out in an email and a follow-up email. I have this great little chart that says be a whole grain detective, and it tells you different ways to know that you're actually getting a whole grain and not getting tricked. All right, I'm going to start doing my dry ingredients here. So this is part of what the whole grain is right here. We're using old-fashioned oats, and I've got a full cup of those. I've got a half cup of flour. You can use whole wheat flour or regular flour, whatever your preference is. You got those oats, so they're going to be the predominant thing in there. I have 2 tablespoons of flax meal, so it's just ground up flax seeds. It adds a little bit of fiber, it adds some protein and a little bit of healthy fat. If you don't have flax meal though, or flax seeds, don't worry about it. It's not necessary. Sometimes I'll throw chia seeds in there too. Those are just little extras to add a little extra nutrients in there. Just give that a little mix. And then I'm going to add, so that was 1 cup of old-fashioned oats, a half cup of flour. Then I've got a half a teaspoon of baking powder and a teaspoon of salt that I'm going to add. There we go. So those are our dry ingredients. We'll just give them a little mix here. And then for our wet ingredients, I've got a half a cup of milk already poured in here. And then I got a couple eggs going in. Eggs are a great source of protein. The eggs and the milk and the flax meal make them a good hearty source of protein along with the whole grains. That's another reason I like this recipe. Oh, I forgot to add the, I have a teaspoon of cinnamon here. I'm going to put that in my dry ingredients. Clean up a little bit. Stuff out of the way. All right, now I'm going to mix this up. Just crack those egg yolks. So we're going to mix this up, and then I'm going to add in the dry ingredients, and then I'm going to throw the apples in with it too. So dry ingredients going in. And I had better turn my griddle on. I'm just going to turn my griddle on to 350. If you're doing it on the stove top, just medium heat would be totally fine. All right, move this out of the way. Clean as we go, right? All right, so we're just mixing everything up here. I got my rubber spatula to scrape things down. Perfect. One last little mix. And we should be good to go. All right, now we're going to add our apples. And the recipe calls for 2 apples, but the apple that I have is pretty big. When you're thinking of whole fruit, a cup is about the size of your fist. So if you have like an apple or an orange or something like that, and it's about the size of your fist, that's a cup. This was a big apple, so I'm just going to throw one in. But if you have just a regular medium-sized apple, you would want to do two. And it really is up to you and your taste preference too. And I do not add any sugar in here because those apples are nice and sweet. They taste great with the cinnamon. Sometimes I have nutmegs. I get the whole nutmegs and I'll grind a little bit of nutmeg in there too, which is pretty delicious. All right, but we're keeping it basic today. Ooh, there's some up in the grater. Let me get that out. We're keeping it basic today, and then you can add on to it however you like. That's the way I like to roll. Okay. Move all of this stuff over. I was a little cramped on my table today getting everything set up. Lots of ingredients, moving parts. I need that spatula. I use coconut oil for the non-stick part. Coconut oil has a really high threshold for heat, so it won't burn the way butter does sometimes if you've got the butter on there for too long. But if you don't have coconut oil, you can use butter, or you can use cooking spray. Either of those would work. Kind of wipe it on there with a paper towel. There we go. And then we're gonna do about half cup scoops. So I've got my half cup here, my flour. And let's put that on there. Get those going, and then we'll talk about saving money too. Because like I said, food manufacturers, they know that we're looking for the whole grains now. We're trying to be healthier. Then they do all kinds of tricky stuff. And one of the things that they do is charge more money if they have something that is packaged nicely and looks fancy, but you don't have to spend that money. Something that you can do is buy store brands, like the oats that I have. I'm not supposed to say store brands, but I've just got a big thing of them at ShopRite, and they're really inexpensive and they last for a long time. I'll actually bring them over so you can look at the size of this. I can't remember how much it was. I think it was like $2.50 or something like that. Really inexpensive. And the same thing goes for rice or pasta, any kind of grains that you're getting. Just go get store brands. I'll show you the container so you guys can see it. Now that we've got some space on the table, it's massive. So a big thing of oats like that will last us for a while. And you can make oatmeal pancakes. My kids and I made apple cookies, so it comes with apples. We made apple muffins last weekend, and they really were more like baked oatmeal. They were really good. I'll send out the recipe for that too, because I think you guys would like it. All right. Our pancakes are setting nicely here. And with oat pancakes, they're just like regular pancakes. You can kind of start to tell when they're ready to flip because they'll get the little bubbles on top, but they are pretty hearty. So you don't want to make them too thick. I like to make sure they're kind of flattened out. If they're too thick, then the inside of it sometimes is a little squishy. So there is a symbol too. Let me see if it's on this that you can look for so that you know that you're getting a whole grain. I guess it doesn't have it on this label, but I'll send that out too, along with a whole grain detective sheet. One of the things that you know are whole grains is when you're getting like quinoa, barley. I think we talked about farro last week because I had made the soup, or last month. So you want to look for mixing up different types of grains, because just like when I say vary your protein routine or vary your veggies, varying your grains is also going to bring different types of nutrients. All those grains have different nutrients in them. They have a different profile of nutrients. So mixing up your grains throughout the week is a good way to go. Now, one thing I will say when you're doing like the grains like rice or farro or any of those, they take a little bit longer to cook. So you can get instant ones. I've seen like instant brown rice. Or what I do is I just cook a whole bunch of it when I cook it. And then I'll put like half of it in the freezer for another week and eat the rest of it. It'll stay good in your refrigerator for like 4 or 5 days. So you can eat it throughout the week and have it a couple of times. That's one way to, cook while you have time, right? just like we meal prep when we can, or make a big meal for leftovers for a couple of days. These are perfect. Look at that nice brown color. Yeah. They smell so good too with the apples and the cinnamon. Makes me think of Thanksgiving a little bit. Everybody has apple pie this Thanksgiving. Hope you all had a great time with your family. I like to cook, but I do not like to bake. So my girlfriend made all the pies for us, which was nice because I hosted. She made the dessert. Funny, my husband and I both really like to cook. Neither one of us really like to bake. So whenever we have people coming over and they say, "What can I bring?" It's always dessert. All right. So those will just take a couple more minutes. You can see this is about the colors that you want. And like I said, they are pretty hearty and they're thick. So you do want to make sure that they're cooked all the way through too. And then I have a little bit of maple syrup. You can put maple syrup in the pancakes. Sometimes I do that for the kids when they're going to heat them up because they do it at the last second and then they're running out the door with the pancake in their hand. So I'll put a little maple syrup right in the pancake batter just to sweeten it up a little bit and give you that maple syrup taste that's really good. But I like to put it on top. I just realized I forgot to get myself a plate. So hang on just a second. I'm going to grab a plate so I can try my pancake. All right. So the importance of whole grains is to make sure that you're filling yourself up and staying full. It helps with weight control. The whole grains also help to reduce the risk of certain diseases like heart disease and colon cancer. And it takes a little bit to get used to the taste if you've only had refined grains. One of the reasons they started making refined grains is because it cooks faster and it would be softer, right? But now there's all different kinds of ways that you can prepare whole grains that we know of that makes it easier to, more palatable, I guess is the right word for it. So they started doing enriched grains because they realized when they started stripping the bran off and taking the vitamins and minerals off, people weren't getting the vitamins and minerals. So people ask me about enriched grains too, which is a good question. Enriched grains are refined grains, so they've had the bran and the germs stripped off of them, and then they put some vitamins and minerals back into it. So they strip it apart, and they'll make the flour or whatever they're going to make, and then they'll put some vitamins and minerals back into it, but they cannot put the fiber back in. So you still are not getting the fiber, and it still is going to digest in your system in the same way that a refined grain does. So enriched grains might be a little bit healthier because they do put some of the vitamins and minerals back in, but you don't get that fiber. I like to try to make sure I'm getting some kind of fiber every time I eat so that I don't get that, spike in blood sugar. And that's how, diabetes starts too, because you become insulin resistant. So you want to be watching out to make sure you have enough fiber. The average woman should have about 20 to 25 grams of fiber. If you want to reference to how much you should be having. And a lot of people like to do like the no carb thing these days, but carbohydrates are where you get the energy from your food. And carbohydrates are in everything. They're in vegetables, they're in fruit. But you mostly get them from grains. So cutting the grains out altogether isn't the way to go. It's not the amount of carbohydrates that counts, it's the carbohydrates. So if you're getting them from beans and from whole grains and sources like that, then you're not going to have the problem with weight management because they are going to fill you up and keep you full longer. So obviously you can't eat as much as you want all the time. Just like everything else, you do it in moderation to stay healthy. All right, I'm going to put a little bit of maple syrup on here and take a bite of this. I've had people in classes say that they like to put like Greek yogurt on top of their pancakes. That'd be probably a little bit healthier, less sugar, right? But and give you some more protein too. So good. That is delicious. I'll have some more of that once I'm off camera. But that's it for today. I hope you guys took some good information from this series. Different ways to save money. Like I said, with the grains, go to the store brands, buy in bulk when you can, look for sales and stock up. The same kind of thing that we do with our fruits and vegetables and our protein sources. And try to eat as much whole grains as possible so that you're getting the fiber and all the nutrients out of the grains when you're choosing grains. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to call or to email me anytime, and I'll answer any questions that I can. And other than that, you guys have a wonderful holiday and New Year, and I'll send out some information for the next series, which is going to be all about soups for wintertime. I'll see you then. Check in the chat box real quick. Heather likes wild rice, whole wheat, bulgur, wheat millet. Yes, I love it. Steel cut oats are great. Yeah. All right. Thank you for sharing that. And thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you next year.